Ready to go? All right, we'll call to order the Ravenna City Council public hearing for, what is today, August 21st at 6 p.m. Chelsea, would you read the call?
Ravenna City Council will hold a public hearing regarding proposed ordinance number 2023-98, titled Ordinance Number 2023-98, an ordinance approving the agreement to create the City of Ravenna / Rootstown Township Joint Economic Development District and declaring an emergency.
And would you call the roll?
Mr. Calfee?
Here.
Ms. West?
Here.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Here.
Mr. Karas?
Here.
Ms. Wood?
Here.
Mr. Harper?
Here.
All right, and the goal tonight is to listen to the public on this ordinance 2023-98. So if there is anyone who would like to speak to it, we'll open up the floor right now. And if there's no one, does anyone from council want to speak on this or have any? Mayor, do you want to give a brief overview if we're not, not here?
Well, this is a project that I met with Mr. McIntyre. We were at Neomed for an event. I don't even remember what it was last year. But they have been working on this for quite a while. But he approached me saying that asked if Ravenna would be interested in doing this. This is because they believe this is the way it's going to be put together. Ravenna is a prime player in that. The JED that is, as everyone knows, besides the ability to tax, it also helps with becoming a large economic development plan for the area, and that's the reason we were interested in it. That in the corridor that they were looking at was from Route 18 down to Ravenna, which is fairly commercialized at this point already. I know from working with Todd Peets and regional planning. I attend those meetings, and the people that attend them, the township people, I know that the people that living out in the rural areas really like that way of life, and they don't like to see that changed. This particular project helps reinforce that. That will concentrate on the area between Route 18 and to their border. There is a section of Ravenna Township and then the city there. And we do own, the city owns a good deal of property in the Rootstown area. So we were able to contribute that way to getting the JED put together. Now I know that to say there won't be any to the south, I think some of the established buildings are already there, and I think that's some of their public buildings, fire department and their meeting hall and those sorts of things. There's no plan to develop this, use it for development now. Now, this is a long-range plan. This is not something that's, we're going to pass it and it'll be immediately effective. This has a good chance of being immediately effective, but not hugely with that. But this is, for the city of Ravenna, this is a good deal for us. People will look at the way that the split was done. We gave this a lot of thought when we sat down, and we wanted to be successful. And to be successful, then the JED needed to have financing. So when we did the split on it, it was 10% for Ravenna for our part for handling the money, and being a partner in this thing. The township was going to get 40% of the funds that come from this, and 50% would go into the jet itself so that we can help with infrastructure and those sorts of things. Because you need to have that kind of power to have an impact. I was excited about this, and we had, I can't remember, we've had a lot of meetings going over this, and we've spent a lot of time, and we went to a source that did some work for us in the past with our CRAs, and this gentleman, background is, he was around when the first JED was developed and helped with that. Well, I think at that time he worked for the state. But he had the skills that we needed to get this put together into a sound document with that. This is being done to benefit the people in Rutschtown. I've spent a lot of time in Rutschtown when I look over my whole life. When I was in 4-H, that's where my club was. Used to ride my horse to Rutschtown so I could go to the club meetings down there. But it's always been a community that had a good reputation, and but they do value their way of life. And the economic development that's taken place down there has been huge, but it's kind of happened at the pleasure of Neomed with that, but without any funds becoming available to help support that through the townships. So this, I think, in the long run, I think one of the big problems they've got there, they're going to have to take a look at traffic control, that there is certain times a day, it's a tough place to get through or get out onto the road. But there are, the purpose of this is to have a good place close by for the city of Ravenna that will help development and create jobs, and our people will have as good a chance at those jobs as the people living in Rutschtown. This is really, to me, was a win-win situation. I'll stop there. Just by way, Dennis West is sitting here. He is our Economic Development Director. He's been very active with this, and he's the one that's worked. What is the lawyer's name?
Jeff Harris.
Jeff Harris from Brecker. Actually, it's been a pleasure to do this. When the meetings that we had and we came together, everybody was open-minded and looked at what is this effect going to be for the people there? What can we do to help maintain the country atmosphere that they like? Concentrate the growth in that area, and that could be a very good way to help what the people want. I remember before Neomed came in down there, there was a really nice cattle farm down there, and I think he sold that to the project. I think it was Brian Jones owned that, I believe. But people haven't forgotten that way of life, and that's true of the whole county. They want to see preservation with that. So that's, for us, it was good for him to stop me and tap me on the shoulder and say, would you be interested in? And we said we'd get together and talk about it. And they've done a lot of work. The trustees down there have done a lot of work in talking to people and getting this in order. And I think it's a good thing for the economic development of the area, not just Rootstown, but of the area.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Well, I'll throw it out one more time. If anyone would like to speak on this ordinance this evening. If you just want to step up and state your name for the record.
To the microphone.
And actually, Brian, do you mind turning on the microphone? Just flipping that. And if you could just state your name and address for the record. Yep.
I'm Ron Knapp. I live at 3992 Sapwood Drive, Ravenna. I was wondering why, what and why was Muzzy Lake involved around, and what economic value was it to put that in there?
And Mr. McIntyre, if I could, I know you have been involved, or the mayor, but do you mind answering those questions? Is it relevant to the conversation or the contract in front of us too?
Yes.
Do you want to speak to it?
The land, we put land into the development of the JED, but our land is not there for development. It is exclusive. It will not, it's not listed for development.
Where is it put in? I'm not curious.
Well, there's, I can't tell you how many acres are to the west of us there, but it's a good piece, a large piece of land. But the city has no plans to develop that, but it does allow us some flexibility as the JED grows. We get to count those places with that. We have no intentions. I know of the people that have built new homes and improved cottages on Muzzy Lake. We don't want to disturb that, and we will not disturb that.
Well, for the record, I live there at
Yeah.
Muzzy Lake. I have a permanent home there, and I am president of Sapwood Shores,
Okay.
which is the association that surrounds the north side.
Yes.
So that's just for the record, so you know that where I'm coming from, and I represent our people in that they just want to know what it's about.
You should.
And they was wondering, why would they be included for an economic thing? I mean, I understand we're Neomed and the factories down there on Lynn Road, that's tax dollars.
It's the nature of the JED and the way it's built. Did you want to respond, Mr. McIntyre?
Yeah, just to go along with what he's saying there, just because something is in there, you're gonna see several parcels that are nothing but a creek bed or a pump station or things like that. Those are lands, and it doesn't matter on the land, but land can be, for every couple parcels of land, you can take another vacant parcel of land. You guys are not being used to leverage anything more than, what's great with the parcel that you have is you have a lot of wetlands. The city has a lot of wetlands back there. So if we need to enhance wetlands in an area, that would help us offset another area. So wetlands, and you guys particularly have issues with the flooding. I know Mr. Bika has talked to me several times about that. And one of the things that's hard to do is leverage funds to get the state to come in and help us out, right, with those things. So by allowing that to be a part of the JED, that could eventually or potentially be used to help leverage funds to help with some of those issues. As far as building, no. I have no intent, honestly, as we've talked about, and he's talked about, we don't want to make a city there. Most people there don't want it bigger than what it is now, or bigger than what it was 20 years ago. We didn't really have a choice. And some of the building that is going on is not really what we were choosing to put in, but rather we were forced to take. So it is if you looked at a map, and I know that we have maps of wetlands, starting at Talmadge Road all the way to the township border, there's a lot of wetlands in that area. And by being able to, true, yes, and so enhancing wetlands is a big portion of the agenda, so.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. And would anyone else like to speak this evening? Is there anyone from council that has any questions or wants to make a comment? And if, one more call out. If no one wants to speak this evening, or if that's everyone, then do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, public hearing is closed. We'll move on to the Ravenna City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And we will call the Ravenna City Committee of the Whole meeting, Ravenna City Council Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6:16 p.m. The first item on the agenda is approval of Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of July 24th. Were there any additions or corrections to those? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept as submitted?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Quick. Well. All right. Number 2 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for and to accept the Ohio Ambulance Program grant. This is sponsored by Public Health and Safety. Ms. Michael?
Yes, as we talked about, we already applied and we were awarded the money. And so this is just the official step that we need to take to receive this money from the state. There is no match. It's for $20,000. If you could be quiet in the back, please. Anyways, you could, the $20,000, there is no match for this, and it goes to our first responders. So as the chief had talked about at our last meeting, it's going to be divided equally on the amount of time for our firemen that served during COVID. And that's all.
Any questions from council? All right. Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 3 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a 2022-23 SALT contract or SALT contracts. This is sponsored by Streets and Sidewalks. Mr. Harper?
Just as a reminder, the groups that will be using salt from the city this year will be the Village of Manaway, Maplewood Schools, PMHA, Ravenna Schools, and Ravenna Township.
All right. Any questions on this? Pretty straightforward. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 4 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the RFPs for 2023 fall tree planting. This is also Streets and Sidewalks.
Again, pretty straightforward.
Yep.
So fall tree planting, I think we're planting $15,000 worth of trees,
Right.
so.
Any questions on this item? All right, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
All right, number 5 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to sign an MOU with Guido's for the patio expansion. This is sponsored by Planning, Mr. Karras, and I think somewhat with CED, but Mr. Karras?
Yeah, so this is the ever-unfolding story of our demolishing the building there, and now, because of that demolition, the wall adjacent to Guido's needed to be repaired, and we authorized upwards of $180,000 from our RLF funds to do that. But with the consideration of having a patio expansion for Guido's, that would affect how that wall is to be repaired. Mr. Bogo is here if he wants to comment on, if I didn't get it right, or... You're doing it. Okay. Okay. So when we met last week at the committee meetings, the planning committee agreed, and I think it was based upon your suggestion that there be a meeting with various people, and that didn't necessarily happen or happen yet, But we did get sort of a vague wording about a possible MOU that I think was crafted by Mr. Bogo and Mr. Finney. In the meantime, there was some email correspondence, and Mr. Semino, I believe, is in the process of drafting up some sort of MOU. I think the outstanding considerations are the term, because and maybe you can clarify, what we received had both a 10-year and a 15-year amount. Then there was the actual amount of the lease
Yeah. And I
per
think,
year.
correct me if I'm wrong, 15 years was suggested. Is that correct? 15 years based on the financing that might have to go into that patio. That will go into that patio. So if Guido's were to move forward, I think what would be on paper in the MOU would be a 15-year lease
15 years.
based on that financing, so that if we were to do 10, and for some reason in 11, we didn't agree to extend the lease, they're not on the hook, still paying for something that,
Well, yeah, to me, it was just, it looked like there were two numbers, and I couldn't figure out which one. The 15, 10 doesn't, that's not, I don't think that's a big issue. I think we do need to kind of have to get some consensus about the lease amount. And then I think there was some concern about, well, it said in this document that if it's not used for 6 or 12 months, then Guido's gives up the lease. I think that becomes a little bit problematic in determining what constitutes not using it. So things like that, I think Mr. Semino's going to have to iron out. And then whether or not, if the lease ends for any reason, Guido's would have to pay to repair the wall back to a state where it's not having the access to the patio. But in thinking about that, and it's not in our agenda, it didn't come up, but it was mentioned that the city would give Guido's the wall. Correct, or did I get that wrong?
Mr. Bogo, you're going to Planning Commission, correct?
Yes, Tuesday.
Okay, can you stand up and explain what is on that agenda? Because you got to use the
Because
microphone.
being recorded.
So right now NDS owns that parcel. The way in which 218 was constructed, the way it tied into Guido's building, as you saw some of the trusses that stuck out from the brick. So the appropriate way, according to the architect, to repair that wall is to add backer blocking with concrete blocks in 2 sets and then a brick face. That's going to extend the wall about 12 inches. It made no sense to me. It made no sense to me to have Guido's wall not be their wall. So we went ahead and engaged a surveyor. We have the plat drawn up where about 12 inches or so gets added to their parcel taken from the 218 parcel. And from this point forward, Guido's wall will be Guido's wall.
So therefore, any corrections or anything that would need to be done to change Guido's exterior down the road would then be Guido's liability because it's their building and their wall.
Well, if and when that happens. So could you clarify, is the Planning Commission authorized to do that, to give Guido's the wall?
Yes.
Or does that have to come before council?
No, it's a planning commission function.
Okay.
As the current owner of the property, I'm taking care of that.
Oh, so it's not going from the city to Guido's, it's going from NDS to
Yes.
Guido's? Oh, okay.
And Mr.
Okay.
Finney needs authority to sign the
Okay.
replat,
Right.
which he needs to get sometime.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Mr. Bogo, the question, you say it's 12 inches out, what you're going to transfer to them. The entire length of the building, or the length of the building and the length of the parking lot also? Is it going to be squared off and go the whole way, or just by the building?
I don't know. I need to
Okay.
look at the plat.
Okay. I understand the concept, though, that NDS is going to give that to them. Okay.
Right.
We have a comment.
Oh, who's,
Cool.
okay. So I'm not exactly sure, it's hard, I assume we'll have something by the September meeting.
Yeah, I'll make sure we do.
So, but Mr. Semino is going to need some guidance unless we just want to debate at that meeting how much the lease should be.
Well, I think what's been discussed is $100 or $1,000 for the year.
Yeah.
Is what I have heard. So if there's any considerations that should be included into that MOU, obviously beforehand, we could include it, but that might be, if that is the one topic,
Could be.
that could be the one debate topic, but everything else around it could be structured to be ready for a vote.
Right. I don't know of any other outstanding issues. I mean, just the wall was one that was concerned, but I think that's been addressed here. So I don't know if there's any other issues other than the lease amount.
Okay.
It sounds like it's going to be a 15-year lease, though, because of the financing.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. And then clarification around giving up the lease. Is that what you were referring to then, clarification around giving up the lease after 15 years when you mentioned?
Well, that was, yeah, I think there probably is a better way, a mutual termination of a lease, maybe termination of the lease if Guido's no longer owns the property, things like that, I think should be, and I would assume, based upon his email message, that Mr. Semino is taking those things into consideration.
Okay.
But of course, he doesn't have the discretion of just assigning an amount.
Right,
So,
right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Karas, I wanted to go back to the 10 years in paragraph 1 and the 15 years in paragraph 4. And I'm not sure that I understand that. That it says in paragraph 1 that there's going to be a lease agreement for the duration of 10 years, renewable upon request after 10 years. And then down in the 4th paragraph, it says the lease term will be 15 years and run concurrently with the private financing being provided for said improvements. I know we got a little bit of an explanation on it, but I am a little confused still on that.
The 10 years is a typo.
yeah, well, what
Oh,
happened was,
that's easily corrected then, thank you.
in a sense, but if you remember, at the committee meeting, we had the first 2 paragraphs, and it said 10 years, and then it was added, and I think what happened was you just added, or Bob or someone added the other paragraphs and neglected to correct the original 10 years, but it's 15 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
Brian, question, the amount of money, depending on what the amount's going to be, where will that money go to?
Where will be paid from?
No, when, say Guido's pays $100 a month, okay, just throwing that out there. That $100 that we receive from them, where is that money going to go to? My suggestion would be to set up some type of fund for small businesses. As I've said before, as we're helping Guido's to help, bring people in our downtown, maybe this $100 could go into a fund for small businesses so that down the road that we could, continue to help other small businesses.
I think that's a really good idea.
So,
Maybe, I don't know, I think we could brainstorm what that means, but certainly we could target other restaurants, for example.
so that way,
all the
it's a
restaurants.
start, I
Yeah.
think, and it might not be a lot, but down,
Yeah.
it would be something, since it may not be a piece of property, which is very convenient right now because it's right next to Guido's and it's a perfect fit. But I think we should think about whatever it's going to be, or if there's a cost or what it is, to use it as possibly a start for other businesses so that we can help others.
Mike, on that, on like her question, could we put that money in like the 219 fund, that's the economic development, and use that for kind of like purpose?
I don't think it can go in the 219 because that would be commingling the funds, but it could replenish,
Yeah, 219,
okay, I was going to say it could replenish the facade that we're using.
Yeah, that you can't do.
No, that's state money, isn't it?
Yeah.
219 is more flexible, you can use it
All of
for
it.
almost whatever, that's
State.
what I was saying
Yeah.
now.
Is it RLF?
Yeah, and we could use it for the purposes she's talking about.
Just for businesses in our, the
Because we
downtown,
have
small
the flexibility to use
businesses.
that as we feel, so we can do that.
Okay.
I mean, that'd be one possibility.
Yes.
The only other thing I want to remind everybody as we're discussing, an amount for Guido's, just to keep in mind, is that They are one of the flourishing businesses downtown. They do bring people into our downtown. And with any expansion that they do, is going to bring in more employees. It's going to allow for them to service more customers, which in turn is more revenue, which also turns around and increases the income tax base that will come to the city as well. So I just want to make sure that we do keep that in mind, that by them improving everything, it is already going to increase the revenue to the city.
Well, my only concern, and I don't disagree with that, is I don't know what the role is in the marketplace for things like restaurants in our town. And it will be an expansion, and it will be something that hopefully Guido's and other restaurants do over time to grow their own customer base. But without adequate compensation to the city, I think we are in effect, and I think I said it at the last meeting, picking winners and losers. Who gets the advantage? Because if more people can be seated in Guido's, that gives them a marketplace advantage over Mimi's, the pub, Megan's, and other restaurants that we're not necessarily helping, although I agree that Amy's idea does sort of kind of bring it back around. So I'm in favor of doing this and the other thing is I love Guido's. I ate at Guido's Friday night. It's a wonderful restaurant, and I'm glad they're here in Ravenna. But when I sit up here, I gotta, divorce myself from those emotional connections to these places and represent what's best for the residents of the city, because, we're giving up space that could be used by anybody in the city. We could put tables there as our property, and people can go to other restaurants, get a drink at the winery, and sit there if we don't do this. So we are carving out a special consideration for Guido's. I just want to make sure there's adequate compensation for the city. That's my main concern. But I'm not opposed to the idea. I'm in favor of the idea, given that give and take.
Yeah, and I hear you, and I will tell you what I told Mr. Barber when he was here talking about it, that I think we can have both, I think. So that's my take on it, that Guido's can be up front, and then we could also have the seating in the back, because there'll be
And
a
then mind
stage
you,
and seating.
the public seating where people are bringing in food, it is
Right.
going to be a city expense
And I
to
don't-
clean up those areas.
I think where we're at then.
So it's a give and take.
Yeah, with the MOU, then, Rob, to circle back on the 3 points that I have for our upcoming conversation then for the MOU, the lease amount, the lease length, and then clarity on the termination. Are those the three key points right now?
I think so. I
Okay.
can't think of any others.
Okay, so I've already emailed you, the mayor, Semino, and Bob asking for the meeting. So once Mr. Semino comes up with the dates between now and the next meeting, next regular city council meeting, then we should have something written for council to review.
Yeah. And just to make sure we understand, the reason we're talking about this and we're trying to fast track it as best we can is because we have to wait for this decision before the wall can be repaired, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we hope to get this on the September meeting agenda.
Okay.
And I'll just make this quick comment, and I know I've heard the comments from certain employees there. I was there recently, and they're really excited to get this going because it will be, I'll just say, an asset, when I say on both sides, on a business standpoint and also an attraction, since they are located, I might as well say, almost exactly in the middle of town. And you go to other cities, and a lot of times what's right in the middle makes a difference. I know Mimi's is going out, but they still have a nice handful of outdoor seating. But going back to Guido's, with that extra seating that they're going to be providing, that's going to be an asset. And what they're going to be spending quite a bit to get that done. So that's going to be quite profitable on their part, and they'll return that, well, to say they'll be returning that on their own investment to possibly help that grow more down the road. That's really good, and they should keeping that, and they'll have other ways for growth.
And Amy, to your point, I added to those 3 points, then add the fund to support the other businesses. So we'll discuss that too, not leaving that out.
Even if it's just, ends up being $20.
Right.
It's something.
Okay. Any other questions or comments that we're missing? All right. If we're comfortable moving this forward, then what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
All right. Number 6 on the agenda is an ordinance to allow the mayor to enter into a contract with Perspectus Architecture. This is also planning, Mr. Karas?
Yes, so at our last committee meeting, you were given the contract that Perspectus drew up. And just to summarize, that we did get the grant that pays 60% of this project, which is maxed out at $30,000. So the ordinance, and did you send this out already? Okay. But we crafted, and we had a previous ordinance, and this just needed to be updated because it was contingent upon getting the grant. So the ordinance modification will be to sign the contract with Perspectus and allocate the $12,000 or the 40% of the contract at $30,000. So that's what this is for.
Questions, comments from council? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Ordinance.
All right. Number 7 on the agenda is an ordinance to update the payroll ordinance to add an additional week of vacation after 25 years. This is Personnel Committee, Mr. Calfee.
This proposed ordinance would increase vacation time for non-union employees that have earned 25 years in Ravenna. It's an effort to equalize what benefit they're going to receive with what a couple of our unions receive, where at 25 years they're able to earn a 6th year of vacation. It's supported by both the mayor and the HR director, and I'm requesting that it goes forward.
Questions from council? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 8 on the agenda is a resolution accepting the amounts and rates for the 2024 budget cycle. This is sponsored by the finance director, Mr. Huff.
Yes, this is a housekeeping item that we do every year. It's required by the Ohio Revised Code. The total taxes in this amounts and rates ordinance is $710,067. That's up slightly from last year's estimate of $704,522, as would be expected. We don't have any special extra levies on, it's just the standard part of the 10 mil levy. So we're just approving that the county puts the taxes on as required.
Okay. Any questions from council? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 9 on the agenda is an ordinance approving the adjustments to the estimated revenues and appropriations, also finance director.
Okay, so this is also a housekeeping item that we do about this time every year. What we do is we have some meetings with the department heads. We go and look at their needs for the remaining part of 2023. And then we also do our own kind of scans internally in City Hall here. We're almost done. We got a draft of it today that we got ready. I'll probably be sending it out in the next day or two, so you guys will have the exact totals there. I wanted to get it out sent before the meeting, but we're still kind of cleaning up a couple items on that. There's not a huge amount of adjustments on here. There's a few items, like I know some chemicals at a couple of the plants really got out of whack there. They need some more budget in those. And there's a couple little maintenance of vehicle type line items that are going to need a little bit more money. We're adjusting a few of the revenue items like that. So nothing real huge. The main projects, the main streets, all the paving projects, all that's already accounted for. So these will be just more minor cleanup type O&M type items.
Are all of those adjustments within the budgets that are in those departments already? Is it coming out of other funds, or are we going to have to appropriate more money?
Well, this is an appropriation.
It is.
This will be, yeah. So it'll take the existing appropriations as we have it now, and we'll look line by line. And any ones that need additional money, like those chemicals I was telling you about, that'll be like an additional, $50,000 or whatever was needed to cover the rest of the year.
But you're not taking that money out of their existing budget, are you?
No.
You're giving them more? Okay.
Yeah.
And you don't know at this point the totals for that? You're going to get that to us in the
I
next
have
couple?
it almost drafted. I have a draft over here, but it's not quite there.
Okay.
There's some ins and outs, you know, it'll be a few $100,000 in total.
A few $100,000.
For the
Okay.
citywide, right.
Any other questions? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
And number 10 on the agenda is an ordinance approving the insurance renewal for Love Insurance. This is also finance director.
Okay. And this also is an item that we do, an annual housekeeping item. Our current insurance goes through the middle of September, I think it's September 14th. And right now, they're procuring quotes. I've been exchanging emails like last week and even today, we've been exchanging some emails back and forth. It includes the cyber coverage, autos, buildings, grounds, liability type coverage. I think we added the drones on last year. So all that stuff's gonna be all packaged together. He promised me to have it by the 25th. So I like the formal offers from everything. He gave me kind of a draft of one today and who's been bidding on it. Travelers and HCC, which is our current coverage, they're both bidding on it, but we do not have the final numbers yet. He did say the cyber will increase just because cyber keeps going up, and the fact that we did have that one claim last year. So that'll, you know, obviously the more claims you have, that'll factor into it. The drone coverage will go up some because I think the chief did add on a couple new drones this year. So the other one, I'm not sure what to quite expect on there. He was thinking it might be as high as 10% increase. It depends on the values they cover. So last year they increased the values that they covered on the buildings quite significantly. If we see that again, it'll go up a lot more. If it doesn't, then it'll stay about the same. So I will send that by the 25th when he gives it to me. It's through the Love Insurance Agency.
Did you say last year the increase was 10%?
I don't think it was quite 10, but it might have been around the 7 or 8% range, yeah, because they did increase the building values a lot.
Okay.
So because of those but that's good though, I mean, because that is, if a tornado blew through here and destroyed it, you know, the coverage we would get before would not build us a new building, you know, based on the market value. So when they increase those values, that would definitely give us more. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but
Yeah.
if it did, you know, it would cover our vehicles, our machines, our buildings a lot better now. So that's why, you know, they had to really update those.
And you said, was it September 25th or August?
September, August 25th, they will,
Okay.
you will have it to me, so I'll send it out to everybody.
Okay.
And the policy goes through September 14th.
Okay.
A couple times during this past year, we've had instances where Mr. Semino has related to us that the insurance that we have does not cover what we thought it would. Are we taking steps to address this concern in some way? Do we need Mr. Semino to review the liability policy, which I think is the one that they said that we didn't have coverage on us, which resulted in a cost for us quite significant.
Yeah,
So
I was actually exchanging emails with him about this last week, and it's actually James Lovey's the owner of the company. And they're not the ones giving the insurance, it's HCC or Travelers or one of those. So
Right, I understand
I
that
did
Love
get
is
with-
just the insurance agents that's searching for us for the insurance policies.
And he actually sent me an email today regarding that. It says, let me see. The legal defense coverages are under review with Travelers and HCC. I do not have an answer on this yet. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jim. That was at 1:30 today.
Yeah.
So
I just think we need to
yeah.
address it in whatever way will help us in this in the future.
Yeah. And I know
It was
we've had-
quite a shock for us.
We had some discussions with them when this happened, too.
Okay.
I mean, it all comes down to how these HCCs and Travelers are interpreting whether it's a union issue versus a non-union issue.
Right.
And yeah, they were covering certain aspects of that ex-police officer's defense, but then other aspects they're not covering. And it's very, very murky in how that works. And I know there was a lot of emails going. I know Semino had a lot of emails with them about that and was very frustrated with it, and rightfully so, because it's very expensive.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
All right, and that's the final agenda item this evening. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
There's this one item I didn't really ask, but this ambulance program, we think it's pensionable.